How I decided to end this session was I looked at the psychiatrist and I said, a couple weeks ago, on the full moon, when I was ovulating,
my girl, let's not tell men that. I mean, at the height of the full moon, when I was ovulating. You guys been following the story of the woman who fell in love with her psychiatrist? And claims that he kept her around until she finally had the strength to leave him. Insane. This story is crazy, and people are addicted to the story, and everyone's talking about it, and everyone wants to weigh in. Okay, let me just say this much right now. The longest story that went freaking nowhere, okay? I have never seen someone talk for a whole hour and a half and never at any point told me what the story was about. Now, she tried to. Believe me, she tries. But I stayed invested thinking at some point she's going to reveal the time when her psychiatrist was 100% out of control. No, at no time does she reveal it. Okay, at no time. But let me just tell you the gist in case you aren't caught up. The gist of the story is this. Here was a woman who was looking to help herself with her ADHD. She has adult ADHD and she felt that she needed to, I guess, get on some medication or something. So she already had a therapist. By the way, plethora of therapists are going to be in this story. But then also, in conjunction with her weekly therapist sessions, she was going to need to find a psychiatrist who could give her medication for her ADHD. Okay. To the background of this whole story, I would like you to know that this woman is a life coach. Okay. Please, you guys. Life coaching is like a collection of people who couldn't manage their own life but want to manage yours, okay? Run far from the life coaches. They always are popping off on social media. Every single person in my entire life who is a life coach is one of the most troubled people that I happen to know in my regular existence. Tell me about that friend of yours that is on Facebook, on Instagram, who's always telling you about how they just completed another course as a life coach and now they want to help you. And you're like, girl, what? I thought you were in a bitter feud with your in-laws and everyone at work and everyone screwed you over. But wait, now you're a life coach? I mean, it's always the worst person in the world is always popping up in your social media being like, I just got my certificate as a life coach. If you need any help, I'd love to help you. Why don't you help yourself first? Anyway, so this woman is a life coach, right? Okay. But Life Coach has a therapist every week, and now she's getting the psychiatrist. Okay, so she gets the psychiatrist. I guess she found him online. She says he was the first person that came up when she Googled psychiatrist in my area, right? First guy that pops up. So she picks him. She is going to meet with this guy once a month. And the sessions are not these, long sessions. It's like a 30-minute session. Somebody calculated that over the 4 years that she says she was trapped in this abusive relationship, she would have talked to him for a total of 24 hours, right? So if you added up all of the times when she saw this guy, it would have been a total of 24 hours over 4 years. But this woman had constructed a fantasy in her mind based off of those little half-hour encounters that should be honestly studied in textbooks. Delusional doesn't even begin to cut what this woman is talking about. But I think the thing that's so crazy is it's delusion based on so little. I mean, I guess that's what delusion is. The idea that things are going on that aren't. But I mean, it is shocking what she was able to construct. And I'm like, this lady is coaching people? All right. So she says she met this guy and she was instantly attracted to him. Handsome Pakistani doctor. And he was her age. And so there was already this instant rapport because he just kind of related to her like a friend. And he was just this kind of person that she thought was really funny. And she goes on later to tell us some of his humor. And I'm like, yeah, he's a real crack up. But anyway, she thought he was great. He was just really able to get her to talk about a lot of things. Anyway, he prescribes her some medication. And they meet once a month. And he asks her for the first 5 sessions. So that would be the first 5 months. How is it going with the medication? And he asks her all the typical questions, how's your sleep? How's your appetite? How are your bowels? These sorts of medical doctor questions, obviously. And she answers all these things. And he asks her, do you have any feelings of self-harm or anything like that? Typical questions. Yeah. The 6th month of their patient-client relationship, he asks her the question again, do you have any thoughts of self-harm? It's kind of a special question that I like to ask. And she's like, no, I don't. And she decides at that point to begin to believe that when he said, I have a special question to ask you, what he meant was he had a special interest in her and, her specific care and like, how are you feeling? Like, I personally, not as your doctor, but I personally am worried about you. I think what it just meant was that he, as a doctor, has a specific interest in how medication affects a patient in that area. But see, this is the beginning of the delusions. So she goes on and on and on and on. I mean, this is like a multi-part series. I found it on YouTube. Somebody put all of them together, so I didn't have to go hunt for them, which is great. I'm not on TikTok, and I never will be. And every single video, I keep waiting for her to reveal when he was just completely out of line. But at no point does she. Her continual beating of the drum is he was super professional person. He was great at pretending to be professional. He always seemed professional, but I know that he was giving me signs and signals that there was something between us. Now, she says that at a certain point in this 4-year relationship, she revealed to him that she did have a crush on him. And she's like, he didn't tell me that was inappropriate, so I just kept going with it. Well, you knew it was. Did he have to tell you? And he doesn't have any ability to change how you feel, but he doesn't have to feed into it. Now, she says that he had weaponized neutrality. She says that his decision not to comment on her having a crush on him was really him saying, I'm into it. You haven't met somebody this delusional since middle school, okay? How in the world has this woman gone on this long with that kind of mentality? Oh, the reason he didn't tell me that my feelings were inappropriate was because that was his way of weaponizing neutrality. I mean, what a way to go through the world, okay? What a confusing way to go through the world. Anytime somebody doesn't say exactly what you want and doesn't like the very words out of their mouth aren't the ones that you would have chosen, then you just get to interpret what their silence meant. I mean, talk about confusing existence. Over the course of this, she's telling her personal therapist all about, her big crush on the psychiatrist. And the therapist doesn't ever say to her, hey, you might want to get that in check. So she sees that everyone is, pretty much okay with the fact that she is deeply in love with her psychiatrist. But the psychiatrist is not feeding into this in any way. She says that she started emailing him on the side between sessions. And at first he would respond to them and then he just kind of stopped. And that kind of bothered her. But then later on, in their conversations, in their sessions that they did over Zoom, he would bring up the stuff that had been in the email. So, of course, that meant he was reading them. And it was probably another ploy of his to kind of like make her keep coming back because he wouldn't give her exactly what she wanted. You keep waiting for the big revelation when he like says, I really have feelings for you too, or, expresses fantasies he's had about her. You keep waiting for this big reveal. It never comes, okay? You can watch all those videos strung from one end to the other, an hour and 20 minutes or whatever it is. At no point does she ever tell you anything where you're like, oh, well, that was dicey. The only thing that I can think is that she apparently continued to tell him that, I have a crush on you, and I have a crush on you, and I have a crush on you. And I think I would have recommended that he be like, hey, why don't we transfer your care to a different doctor in our group or something like that? Maybe he could have done that because obviously their visiting together was a problem for her. It might not have been a problem for him, but clearly it was a problem for her. I mean, she was like deeply delusional. To keep her on was not to help her. And that's her big problem with the whole thing is like, he was supposed to be helping me and he wasn't. I'm like, but you knew you had a problem. At what point were you going to take control of your life and be like, I really like him and we can't really be together, so I should probably move on? If only so that she could move on to a different psychiatrist and then approach him later and be like, hey, I really like you, Why would you stay in the relationship that is impeding you from having a relationship with him when you could just move on to a different psychiatrist? She loved this problem. And I think that's the thing that's so surprising to me. She's trying to act to us as though she was a victim, but I'm like, no, you loved every minute of it. Okay, so over the course of this super long and boring story where nothing is revealed, she tells us about how she finds out that he takes in-person patients and she's been seeing him on Zoom this whole time. And apparently when she found out that he did actually have an office, she said, do you ever see people in person? Hoping that he would see her in person. He's like, not really. I don't really do that. Well, it was a bold-faced lie because he did, but he didn't want to see her in person. Over the course of time, she has some reason why she has to call the office manager and finds out from the office manager that her doctor actually does see people in person. So then she puts something on the books, but not before she approaches him at their next session. It's like, how come you lied to me? And she says, oh, he told me the biggest lie. He told me that, oh, I just didn't think you'd want to meet in person. And she's like, how could he think that? He knows I have a crush on him. Of course I'd want to meet in person. And I'm like, that's your answer. You have a crush on him. And she's like, it was so weird because he was always so professional. And then suddenly he like gives this like weird lie about like, I didn't think you'd want to meet in person. I mean, like, I could just see that he was panicking. Really hung up on the fact that he didn't want to see her in person. But at no point does she manage to put together, the reason he doesn't want to meet you in person isn't so he can just prolong this delicious agony, you know, this pull and push of lust. It's because he doesn't want to see you. All right? He doesn't want to see you. But, you know, she somehow decides that that's really not going to impede her from believing that he has secret love and feelings and affection for her. So she finally meets him in person. When she meets him, she throws herself on him, gives him this huge hug, and he pats her on the back like he's burping a baby. And it's like, at that point, is that the point when you're like, he's not into it? He didn't try to take advantage of this moment in which he could like put himself on you. His deepest desires are finally coming to fruition. I mean, what? She doesn't come to any reality then. At one point, she decides she's going to, you know, have a little chat GPT buddy who's going to inform her about this relationship that she has with the psychiatrist. So she's constantly asking Henry what she should do about this. And like she talks to this Henry like he's another human being. She's got a full-fledged relationship going on with chat GPT. Bringing that into her psychiatrist appointments, being like, well, chat GPT, Henry told me blank, 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 blank about what you're doing. I tell you, I think people were so hooked on this story because they kept thinking she was going to reveal like the point at which the point never came. Finally, she lets him know that she's having dreams at night about him. And she decides to drop this bomb on him.
How I decided to end this session was I looked at the psychiatrist and I said, a couple weeks ago on the full moon when I was ovulating, I had a dream about you. And he was like, oh yeah? And I said, yeah. So I told him this. And I said, yes, we hooked up right here in this office. And he all of a sudden just looked so uncomfortable. He didn't say anything. He couldn't look at me. He couldn't breathe. And sure, you know, maybe he was uncomfortable because he didn't like me saying that I had a dream where we hooked up, but he could have said that. But he didn't. You want to know why he was uncomfortable? Because he had probably played out that fantasy so many times in his head. And there I was, speaking it back to him. And it was like I had psychically downloaded one of his fantasies.
My girl, let's not tell men that. I mean, at the height of the full moon, when I was ovulating. Oh, and she's like, he looked really uncomfortable. Yeah, why in the world would that be? At the height of the full moon, I was ovulating. Oh, the delusion knew no bounds. I tell you, these stories this week just were cracking me. Okay, so, it doesn't go well after that. She draws a personal boundary in her life with an ex-boyfriend that was bugging her. And then she realized, oh, actually, I can draw boundaries. And then she's like suddenly decided she was going to like really pull together her power and, you know, get out of the clutches of this doctor. But what it really came down to was her insurance no longer covered visiting him. And so then she decided it wasn't worth it. Imagine that. She could torture herself for free, but when she had to pay for it, she wasn't into it. So that's the end of that story. You guys, I feel like we were scammed. We all were in on that story for so long. Like, what's going to happen next? What about the lady who fell in love with her psychiatrist who was abusing her the whole time? Diddly squat. The insurance stopped paying for her torture. Can you even? And this person is a life coach, okay? And over the course of this story, she has managed to tell so much about where she is and, you know, the race he was and enough clarifying details. At one point, she accidentally says his name accidentally. And now she's like trying to go after people who are like doxing this guy and putting his picture up online and saying his full name and telling about his family. In one video, she's like, you guys are like crazy. You're doxing him, putting his information out there. You're like giving out family information. I couldn't even find out about his family information. You guys are crazy. And I'm like, you are, because you just let us know that you were trying to find out his family information, but you couldn't manage it. I mean, what an insane person. But her self-righteousness throughout the whole thing, her insistence that she knew what was really going on in his head. You know, his every look, every word, every absence of speech was like minutely broken down all month long until she saw him again. this is a person who constantly translated for him what he was thinking because, he looked in this direction or he looked in that direction. And at one point, when she lays out to him that she's been having dreams of him at, the height of the full moon, he responds to her by saying that he is feeling a salad of emotions. And this is one of the things that she just like couldn't get past. Like she just loved this so much. Like she was like, he is so funny. He just totally gets my sense of humor. You will not believe the funny thing he said. And this is it. I'm feeling a salad of emotions right now. There's a beat of raw emotion and the surprise of the tomato and the salt that makes you taste it all. And she's like, wasn't that so funny? Like, cause that's so how I am. I'm like such an intellectual, and I just like, I love like these little analogies. It just like, oh my gosh, it was like just so my thing. This like intellectual little analogy. Cause like a beet is raw. So it was like his raw emotion. The surprise, like of the tomato, like that's a pop in your mouth when like, you're like, oh my goodness. Like, when you like bite into a cherry tomato, and then like, like the salt that makes you taste it all. It's like, just a little bit different, a little, like what I had said about the dream was like the salt, makes you like taste all the things, because I knew that when I shared that with him, I had revealed to him, I was mirroring back to him his own fantasies. But that's how he drew her in, with that amazing sense of humor. What is funnier than a raw beet?